So it's important before you start on any transmissions, identify neutral. So neutral on this one is up and down, and then you have your H patterns. So you go all the way up, you should be able to engage 2 gears. Let's see. 1, 2. You go down one more rail. 1, 2, and then down to the bottom. 1, 2. So we have all 6 positions. Okay. So in order to start on this transmission, or any transmission, you got to make sure your shifter assembly is in neutral. So we're ready for that. This transmission right here has the shift fork and the throwout bearing connected. It's a good you can see how the manufacturer lubricated this. Okay, a lot of this is from my fingers, but you just got to pull this out. Okay, pull the shift fork out. Let me pop it off. There we go. And then the one thing I always worry about is students losing this spring. Okay, this spring is really important because that's what locks onto that ball. So I'm going to make sure that spring goes right inside so we don't lose that spring that holds the shift fork onto that pivot ball. Okay, so it just pops right in here, this ball. Okay, and then the throwout bearing has 2 sides. So the side that will face out towards the clutch is this one. Okay, so that would be facing this way, and it just slides right on right here. And then we'll just put that out of the way. Yep. When it stops.
Rolling.
So we have to identify some other things about the shifter assembly. There are stops. So this is like just a little pin that holds it in place. We also have a detent right here. We have a neutral start switch right here. On the top side, this blue one, this is your backup lights. Okay, so backup lights, starting switch, and then these are a detent, and then this is a detent up here. So detents are where you're going to have the spring and the check ball. We've got to make sure we identify these. And the way we're going to identify these is we're going to actually use paint pens. And so everything that comes out of this one is going to be yellow. Okay? Everyone that comes out of this one is going to be white. Because if you mix up the check balls and the springs, they're not always the same. And so that would affect the way it works and the way it feels. So this one right here is going to be blue. Okay, we're going to use a paint pen a lot on this transmission to identify different synchronizers, different shift rails. These are really useful for the first time you ever take apart a transmission that you've never done before. You need to identify it with some kind of marking system so you know direction and you know which pieces go where. So really good, useful tool. So now we're ready to take off that shifter assembly. So I'm going to use a 10mm socket and an impact, 3/8 impact gun. And make sure we're in a neutral position right here, and we are. Okay. Now I will say I'm going to have to move it out of the way to get this one bolt. Get my safety glasses on. Okay. Everything's locked tight on this. So, and that's pretty common for transmission. So, because it's locked tight, sometimes they're a little hard to take out. Okay, so I got that done. Now I got to take out these other pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a big wrench, take out my detent right here. So this one actually is, they're referring to this one as a shift check. That's what they're calling it, a shift check. Okay, so you can see it's a spring-loaded check ball, and on the instruction sheet it's right here, and it's referring to a shift check, and we're on step 3, remove the shift check and stopper bolt. So now we need to remove that stopper bolt. 14. Yep. And I already have it loose, so screw that out. Okay, set these aside. We got to remove our, that looks like it is the park neutral position switch. So let's go ahead and get that. So we need to get that. It's 21. Get this out of the way. And this is just a switch. All it is an on-off switch with a little plunger. So, okay, you could check it with an ohm meter if you wanted to. Okay. Now, because this is in neutral, I should be able to lift this straight out. And there we go. And what you'll see is that this is actually what engages your shift rails through the gates. So if you look down inside here, you'll see, and I'll get a screwdriver so we can point it out. These are your gates right here where I'm putting a screwdriver through. So when you're shifting, you're moving up and down between each of these gates, and it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4 levels. So actually I only shifted in 3 levels, so there was one that I didn't find. So anyways, there's 4 levels on here, so 4 shift rails.
Rolling.
Okay, whenever I do a transmission for the first time, I always make sure that there's bolts that are different lengths, okay? And so to keep track of your bolts and so you don't have pieces rolling around, screw the bolts back in, okay? And that way you know where they go, okay? All right, I'm going to remove this bracket. Now the bracket, we're going to have to separate these 2 cases, and I want to show you something. There's a really good lever, a prying section right here with this bracket in place, okay? So right here, let's see, yeah, right here we could maybe press. So if I can't get this thing to separate, I might want to put that bracket back on, and so I can separate it, but I need to get it off so I get out the bolts. Okay, and I'm just going to screw that bolt back in, take off the this other switch real quick. Need to use a socket. Let's see. No, that's not going to work. Hit stop or something. Oh, I don't know that. There we go. Okay. All right, so that was a little tight switch. Get that wrench off. And we should be able to just slowly remove it. So again, this is the backup lights. It's a regular on-off switch just like the other one. So it's going to have a little plunger on it. Wow, a lot of Loctite on this. Okay, there we go. Sticking this all in place. We're good. All right, so now let's go see where we are in instructions. So I'm going to turn the page. Now it wants us to remove the check ball and plugs and the 2 springs as shown. Okay. Of course, if you're doing a rebuild, it would have you discard this different parts depending on what the kit is. So we're going to remove those right now. It might be 14. Yep, 14. Do 1, and then I'm going to mark the ball and the spring with paint. Okay. And then we have the spring inside. Hit stop real quick.
Rolling.
All right, so magnets are your friend when you're dealing with transmissions, okay? Because you can pull out those parts out. Again, I want to mark this with and this was the yellow one. Okay, so I have yellow, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to mark these springs. I'm going to mark the check ball too. Okay, and then you should put this somewhere where it's safe where you could set it aside and you won't won't roll around. So somewhere in a rag. So now let's do the next one. Okay, get my magnet, my check ball. This one was the white one. That detent right there. You know, paint it white. All right, now we got to do this top one. See, you can look and see. Oh wow, look at that. It's blue from the manufacturer. Got lucky on that. Okay, but you'll notice. Let's see. There we go. It's a little bit different of a setup. So now we're dealing with an interlock system in addition to a detent. Okay, so this is definitely a different thing, and this is where students, they don't pay attention to the detail, and then they get the springs mixed up. They forget where this pin goes. Okay, almost don't even have to do that one. You know, so it's really important that we are consistent with our identification system with transmissions, because they are calibrated springs. This one's the shortest, this one's the medium, this is the long, this has the interlock pin. Really important we understand that. Okay, we're ready to go ahead and start pulling this apart. So I want to show you organization. Organization is everything, because you're going to be taking apart a transmission that has probably 400 pieces inside it. So you got to have a method of identification. You got to have a method of keeping things out of the way, a method of making sure that things don't roll around, because the check balls will roll around. Regs work really well. Another thing that works well is tackle boxes. So you could put these in the little slots for tackle boxes for fishing. All kinds of different ways. So let's go ahead and start taking this apart. And we are on this step right here. Remove the transaxle fixing bolts as shown. And then we're going to remove the core plate. One bolt here. There we go. An extension. Okay, so on the back side of this transmission, this is really important I show you. I have two bolts that are different color than the other bolts. Most people will not pay attention to that. I pay attention to that because that is really important when we get that right, because those could be different length bolts. Okay, again, paint pins. If you think you have a different bolt, mark it. Okay, they might be a different thread, they might be different lengths, I don't know. But there's a reason why those are a different color bolt or different kind of bolt than the other ones. So just mark them, and then you can go ahead and pull them out and put them in a pile. Okay, and have an organization to them. So I need another rag, looks like. So I'm on my second level. I might screw these back in, which is another possibility that we could use. Okay, like I did with this one right here. So we could screw these back in. Okay, so now it says to remove the plug. This is a plug right here that we got to remove. I want to take a screwdriver, and then I'm just going to hit that in there, Might be able to, yep, I can twist it and get that out. And then inside here is a snap ring, okay? So that's really important that we identify that, because that's one of the steps. If I turn the page, the next step is, while spreading the snap ring of the main shaft rear bearing located in the plug hole, remove the transaxle case. So I need to take a pair of snap ring pliers in here, and I need to, there we go, you heard it drop, okay? So that's what happens is this, when you expand that clip, the whole shaft inside here drops. So when you're going back together, you got to support that input shaft underneath here. You got to put a block or wood or something to hold that up so you can get this clip to go back on, okay? Now we're ready to start separating this case. So let's see, here's a good place right here. Good. Never put anything where it mates the surface, okay? So we got that. And might need to, nope, that's still loose, so that's good. Okay, spin this case around, find another one. Another spot. Right here. Again, you don't ever want to pry inside here. Once when you dent this aluminum, it's over. And then we should be able to go. There we go. And there's our shifter assembly. Okay. And then any shims that fall out. Okay. So these are really good to keep, by the way. But any shims that fall out, or in this case, here's the shims. Okay. We got to make sure those shims go back in the same place. So this one has a shim. That has a shim. No shim on the final drive here over on this side. So we have three clusters. Here's a cluster, here's a cluster, and here's a cluster. So this is my main shaft, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and take this shim and I'm going to stick it down inside the case right here. And right where it's supposed to go. And then I can put this out of the way, okay?
Rolling.
So right now we're in neutral because all the gates are aligned right here, okay? So when you put all these gates back together, this is what it needs to look like. It needs to be through. And the reason why is when you put this shifter assembly in right here, you're going to be sliding this lever down inside here like this to install your shift mechanism. So this is how we engage different gears, by moving this and then sliding each gate up and down. Okay, so this is actually a 6-speed transmission. Reverse is over here. So we have a reverse gear right here. I'll shift it into reverse. That's reverse. You can see this one dropped up right here. Okay, so this lever goes up. It moves a mechanism that pushes that down. Let's shift it down into neutral. Okay, so we're back into neutral. This is first and second gear right here. You could see first and second gear because if you look inside, you got a small gear turning a large gear. That small gear turns this large gear, so then first gear would be down. That is first gear. The next gear is this one right up here, engaging this gear, so then second gear would be up. Right there, that'd be second. So this one is down is first, up is second. So let's go back. Okay, and we got to get it all in neutral because remember, we cannot move multiple shift forks. Third and fourth is right here. Okay, so we go up to this gear. This gear right here only transfers the power from the input shaft to this other cluster. So it's almost like an idler gear. This gear right here where I have my hand. Okay, right, let's see. Yeah, right here, this is like an idler gear, okay? So keep that in mind. Third gear is actually this one. This is fourth gear, this is fifth gear, and then this is sixth gear, okay? So it's going to tell us to, as we go follow the directions, it's going to tell us to shift it into third gear, which is going to refer to that we want to move this shift lever down on this one. Let's see. And sometimes it's going to take a little bit of force, and then with your transmissions, they've been apart before, so it's very possible, there we go, it's very possible that you won't be able to move these because these have all been taken apart. So that is third gear right there. Neutral would be up. So third gear, fourth gear, neutral is in the middle, 5th gear, and then 6th gear it's going to be, and this is where I need to use the, let's see, I want to be able to move that up. There we go, right here. There we go. So it's all a matter of getting everything, all the synchronizers and the dog teeth aligned. So that's engaged right there. Okay, and let's drop, actually it's not all the way engaged. Let's do it one more time. There we go. So you can see how this gate right here is up. So this gate's up, this shift fork's up, and the synchronizer's engaged. So put it back into neutral, drop it down. So we all start with neutral, and then we go up and down depending on what shift fork we're moving and shift rail. So our goal today is to remove this, okay? So we're going to follow the directions as we go along. So the first thing we're going to probably be removing is, we're not going to do all these steps for the bearings and the races. So we're going to skip all that, okay? All right, so now we want to remove the shift lever right here for the reversed, remove the bracket and bolts for the reverse lever. So it looks like that we have maybe a, could be a 14, nope, might be a 12, yep, 12 millimeter. Get my air hose. There's 1, 2, and then we can remove this whole bracket assembly. Let's see, should be able to. There we go, and then this will come off. So, and you could see that this little knob right here goes on over the top of this rail. There is a little keeper here that goes inside the shift fork right here. Okay, so that goes on side the little lever right here, and we're going to set that aside like we've been doing all our other parts. Okay, again, so we have an option. We could put these back in, or we could keep them separate, or we could mark them. I'm going to put these back in. You can see all the Loctite that are on these, and then we're going to go to the next step. Next step right here, pull out the reverse fork rod, then remove the reverse shift fork. So we got to remove this roll pin. Okay, so this pin right here. So now that we have a hammering job. Roll on. So we are following our directions. Pull out the reverse fork, then remove rod, then remove the shift fork. So what it's referring to is, here's our reverse. We're going to actually pull that rod out right here, and then we can remove that shift fork. Now here's the problem. Everything is directional, so I'm actually going to use white on this reverse one, or this is the blue, sorry. I'm going to put blue here, and I'm going to mark the shift fork. This is top side, this is top side, okay? So I know now if I flip it around, this is going to be the way it's going to go, okay? So direction is everything. So the next one I'm going to do is white, and then the next one I'm going to do is yellow, and then maybe I'll get the black pin. Okay, so now I need to drive out the roll pin. You can kind of see I already have it kind of pulling out right here. Okay, you see right on top of my finger. So we're going to take this pin out right here. Keep track of it, because you don't want it to go shooting somewhere and you lose it. And then always be aware these ridges are really sharp. There we go. And I did exactly what I said not to do. Oh, there we go. So this is where the magnet's really good to have. Whether it's a pocket screwdriver magnet or just a regular magnet, okay. It's kind of a two-piece design roll pin. So one goes inside the other, okay. So just be aware of that. I'm going to put that over with this for now. But I want to show you a drift punch, okay? Or this is the punch I'm using. As we get further, the sizes, they get more pronounced. So these are like for roll pins, or you could use them for center punching too. So really cool set to have. Okay, so now I got this out. Now I could go ahead and lift this shift lever off. But again, direction. So I know that this is related to that. This is all reverse. So I'm going to mark this. What? That's the white one. I guess you should keep track of your pads. So white or blue and blue. So I know how this all goes. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this if I can. Oh, let's see. Go ahead and what?
I was gonna say.
Okay, so I need to really talk about this. So I was trying to pull this out, and I can't pull it out. So it means I need to do what I did with this: is lift the pin up. And by lifting the pin up, then we could remove the pin and this bracket assembly. Now here's the problem. Okay, this is the detent right here. This detent is really complicated. So if you look inside here, and I'll use a pocket screwdriver, this detent has a spring right here, but then it has one of those rods, then it has a check ball, then it has a shift interlock pin inside. Between this rail and this rail is a shift interlock pin, but there's a check ball inside the rail, there's a check ball inside this rail, there's a check ball inside this rail with another locking pin. So it goes pin, check ball, pin, check ball, pin, and then rail with another pin. This is the most complicated detent and interlock system I've ever seen. So here's a pin, you have a rail, it's going to be another pin, check ball, pin, check ball, pin. So we're going to be talking about that as we pull it out in stages. So let me go ahead and pull this up. So I already have this is the top side of the transmission, the bell housing, okay? So I already have a blue one on the top, so I'm gonna reuse the white one again. So the white one the other white one I used was on this side of the case, okay? So you see I have a yellow here, and then there was a white. So I have no problem using white again. So I'm gonna mark this white right here. And then I'm going to see, we're going to use the plug.
It's in your hand.
Oh yeah, so here we go. Mark that. And then let's pull these pieces out. So here's the spring. And then we're going to take out our pin inside here. So there's the pin I was talking about. Okay, and now I should be able to take this out. Let's see. Might be another check ball in there, so let's see. Yep, there's a check ball. Okay. Mark that white. Now let's see if we can pull this out. And like I said, these guys are really hard, and you can't force it. So I have a couple transmissions where students were hammering on these, and they mushroom the heads, they damage. So when you're hammering on these to get them in, that check ball's being forced into an aluminum case, and it dents the case. So it's either you finesse it, wiggle it, and if it doesn't go, then you just got to keep playing around with it until it does go. All right, so let me get a pair of pliers, and then I'm going to protect the jaws. So again, these are all really machined pieces, and you wouldn't want to use straight jaws on any of this, okay? And then now I have this piece out. I'm going, okay, what's top side? Well, there's the top side. There's the top side. There we go, okay? And then I could put that little pin right here. Okay, so I know where everything goes. I have a plan. I see another pin inside here. So you see that little pin right there? There's another one. So I'm going to pull that out. And you'll see right here, come back over here, Jordy. You'll see my magnet, and then there's one check ball, two check balls, and then another pin. Okay? That's why this setup is so hard to do. So in between this check ball and these two check balls is a shift rail. And then you have another check ball and a pin and a lock pin right there. Okay, so really challenging to get that all right. All right, this is where I'm going to have you stop, and then I want you to reassemble. We'll do the other clusters later, but this is enough for one day, and then I want you to reassemble this for Thursday's class. So, and then then on the following week, we'll focus on these shift rails. Okay.
Rolling.
So the person that I'm working with, Mr. Lear, he brought up a really good question. So we had this top part of the case that fits over all this, and we had those two detents that we had to remove initially. And he was wondering what these areas right here were for on these shift rails. And those are where the detents go. So that detent that was sitting in that case had the spring and the check ball right here, and that is the neutral position. And then sixth gear would be that this shift fork would go up, okay, or actually this is a 3-4, so up would be fourth gear. So if it went into this one, so up, the rail would go up, this would go down, that would be fourth gear, neutral, and then this would be third gear. Okay, this one right here, this is neutral. Down would be first gear, so down with the shift fork would bring the detent up here to first, back to neutral right here, and then down to here would be second gear. So you had to remove these two detents to remove the case off of the whole cluster in the shift rail assembly. This rail did not have any detents in the top half, neither did the reverse have any detents. That's why you only had two detents to separate the case. But in this, with the bottom rails, so all three of these rails, 1, 2, 3, are dependent on this detent and this detent. Okay, really complex system. So you can see how these bores intersect and merge on this one rail right here. These two detents. It's a very complicated system, and I can't stress enough for being organized in some way to keep this straight in your head, because I guarantee you the manuals don't make it very clear, so you got to have a system to make it clear for yourself.
Rolling.
So this is the reverse gate and shift rail, okay, that went into actually this slot right here. And remember, I told you this is a very complicated detent assembly, and what I want to do is I bring this up, I wanted to show you this is offset slot on the bottom of this, and a lot of students don't even pay attention to this little detail. But what that means is this pin can only sit in this rail in one position, so that way the detents work properly. So let's see, looks like that this needs to go, so the detent's going to go into these notches right here. So the slot's going to be facing over to this side. So it's really important we get those slots in the right position so it drops down all the way.
Rolling.
So I wanted to I put this gate and shift rail back in. I wanted to show you to get the roll pin hole lined up. When you get it lined up, that assembly should be in neutral here, and then you should be able to insert this pin. Okay, so if you don't have that slot on the bottom of the rail in the right position, then you would not be in neutral on the shift gate, and you would not be able to get the pin in. So again, you don't want to force anything. You want to align everything. I'm in neutral. The roll pin holes hook is aligned, and now I could drive that through, and this pin and the slot on the bottom is properly placed, and the notches inside are set up for my detent and spring to go in and engage. Really important that we pay attention to those kind of details. But we never want to force things. We want to just understand things and pay attention to every little detail you can. And this is what separates a transmission tech from most technicians, is there's so much detail with transmissions in little pieces that what we end up finding is most mechanics say, I don't want to bother. So if you're organized and you have your mindset right, you know, anyone can do these.